Uh-oh. So for the sake of the recording, welcome to the Marine Amateur Radio Club's in-person meeting. We have a special guest, well, multiple special guests, the Crossroads Club. So welcome, welcome. It is so great to see more than just the people that I see 3 times a week or 3 times a month, the Marine Amateur Radio Club. So welcome. I'm glad to see. I also see there's a bunch of people on Zoom. So welcome, welcome everybody. It looks like they're still logging in. So tonight I am going to talk about what to do when disaster strikes. And just so everybody knows, the very end of this slide, there's a QR code where you'll be able to take a picture of it and download the PDF of this. So everything will be included, okay? I usually wait, and during the presentation I snicker because I know at the end I'm going to tell you all that you don't have to do what you're doing. I decided, you know what, we have visitors here, I guess I'll play nice. So we also have a representative from Salt Lake City Emergency Management. So thank you for coming here. And I know that I've missed somebody, so please excuse me because, well, that's what happens when a person with an IQ of 3 gets up here. So that's my excuse. So. Okay. So tonight I'm going to talk about understanding the big one. This is kind of what we're all preparing for. I'm going to start maybe discussing a possible way to start in your club to become better prepared. And I'm going to then talk about when the worst happens, the exact things that you should strongly consider when it happens. And obviously when that happens, what to do. And then we're going to summarize. So this presentation will focus on how you can be an asset to your community, your neighborhood, your city by being a effective radio communicator in a grid down event. Now, I say a grid down event because it doesn't have to be the 7.5 earthquake. There are other things that cause the grid to go down. But I'm here to talk about the earthquake. That's what we're all preparing for. And so I'll deal a lot with that. You'll be taken on a ride through a disaster to see what you might see during the big one. When that happens, you'll be asking yourself, oh, what can I do to help myself and my family and my community? And by the way, Salt Lake County is 50 years plus past due for the big one, and we're gonna talk about that. And here's the kind of funny thing that I see a lot. People making decisions in Salt Lake County in particular on what to do during a 7.5 earthquake have never actually been in a 7.5 earthquake. They refer to experiences in California, you know, the big 6.7, right? And listen, I'm here to tell you, we're going to have aftershocks bigger than a 6.7, okay, when the big one hits. So this is why I am here. I've been through a 7.5 and a 7.4 earthquake. I know what's coming, and it scares the living heebie-jeebies out of me because it is something that, for me, it was life-changing. So I'm going to talk about my experiences a little bit later on. Did you know that Utah averages over 700 earthquakes per year? We are in a very earthquake active zone. And 13 of those earthquakes are greater than 3.0. A lot of times you can't feel the earthquakes, even the larger ones, because they're so doggone deep under the earth, you know. I have a bedroom and an office that's downstairs in the basement, the lowest level of this multi-story house, and I can feel, when I know that there's no trucks out there, I can feel these really, really small tremors. And I know that they are just deep earthquakes because I look on the Utah Geological website and I can see when, you know, they mark when the earthquakes happen. And so they're happening all the time. The one that we need to be concerned about probably is the Wasatch Fault. The Wasatch Fault is actually pretty long. It goes from the north of Malad, Idaho, all the way down past Fayette, Utah area. So that's way past Nephi. The Wasatch Fault is divided into zones. Each zone is a segment of the Wasatch Fault. The Wasatch Fault is not one continuous fault, okay? It's actually comprised of hundreds of faults. Okay, we just call it the Wasatch Fault because they're following along the Wasatch Mountain Range. And again, it is not one fault. As a matter of fact, looking at central Utah, these are just some of the major faults that are running through there. And I'm going to bring my laser pointer up and I'll show you this right here is the so-called Wasatch Fault. And you can see it is on the west coast, if you will, of the Wasatch Mountain Range, okay? But we have, oh my goodness, hundreds of faults in Utah. There are various places where Utah geologists have dug up to see the history of the faults that we've experienced. Every time a large-scale magnitude earthquake happens, it leaves a mark. You know, you've heard the term, well, that's going to leave a mark. Well, a 7.5 earthquake leaves a mark. What's more, we can read these marks and we can read the history. We know just by the geological record the history of the earthquakes along the fault. The Wasatch Fault, the central area has 5 major zones, and those zones are listed there. And you can see every time a major earthquake happens that's over 7.0, that's the gold standard for this particular study. It is marked here on, it shows you where it happened, which zone it is, and how long ago it happened. We have a 20,000 year history of when these big earthquakes happen along the Wasatch Fault. Every 300 to 400 years, a major 7.x earthquake happens somewhere along the fault line, okay? Now there's a problem with that. When Brigham Young arrived in the valley, well, there's no earthquakes then. How long has it been since we became a state, you know? We have never experienced a big earthquake. You know, we're between earthquakes, if you will. The diagram at the left shows when the major earthquakes happen during the last 6,500 years. So this is during the last 6,500 years. And I want you to take a note at the center, the central Salt Lake City zone. The last major 7.x earthquake happened approximately 1,200 years ago. And if you take a look at the entirety of the Wasatch Fault, you can see, well, based on history, guess who's next, right? And so this is why Salt Lake County has been prepping up for the big one. Okay, we don't know exactly when it'll happen, but we know it will happen. And that you can rest assured. Now, when it does happen, this is a map of the estimated building damage for a 7.0 earthquake, and this is for downtown Salt Lake. This is Salt Lake City proper. And the circle there are the avenues and the East Bench. And you can see, if it's in red, there's a 70 to 100% probability that the property will be completely damaged. And so, including structures that are collapsed. That's an awful lot of red there, okay? The yellow is something like 50 to 80% probability of complete collapse. The yellow doesn't signify a less amount of earthquake you're going to feel. It's just the probability of the number of structures that are going to be felt. So let me tell you a little bit about Chile, 1981, when I was down there. That's where I experienced a 7.5 earthquake, and exactly 7 days later, a 7.4 hit. And they were trying to figure out if the 7.4 was an aftershock because they couldn't identify where the epicenter right away was on the 7.4. They certainly know where it was in the 7.5. So let me try to describe what I felt. It was probably 6 o'clock-ish, 7 o'clock-ish in the morning. I'm up, I'm dressed. It is a Monday morning. I am writing a letter to my home. We didn't have ham radios. I didn't have a ham radio or a cell phone. Yeah, this is in 1980s, buddy. You know, this is old time. And as I was writing my letter, I want you to try to picture, if you will, standing right next to a train track, okay? Put your ear so you're about 4 inches away from the big diesel train that's going about 60, 70 miles an hour. Instantly, that's what it sounded like and felt like. That's the closest thing that I can imagine. You had to be, it felt like 4 inches away from a big old locomotive going 70 miles an hour. Can you imagine that? And it hit immediately. There was no build-up. It was just, here we're gonna go. You better hang on. You know, no. It boom. It hit immediately. And when it happened, wherever I was standing, guess what? That's where I fell. Okay. There's no such thing in a 7.5 earthquake of running to that door and thinking that door entry is going to save you. That does not happen. People have this misconception that, oh, I'll just run outside or I'll just run to a safer place. No. In a 6.5 earthquake, sure. But in a 7.5, when it hits, it hits. And this is the reason why so much injury and death happens, because you fall down where you are, and anything that is not secured, guess what? It gets flown across the room, okay? How many people have a China hutch in their home, okay? If you happen to be standing right there and the 7.5 hits, guess what? You're falling down wherever you are, and that China hutch could be on top of you. This is the reason why there's going to be so much death and chaos and destruction and suffering, is because somebody didn't spend $10 and bring cables up from their China hutch and tie it to a number of rafters in their ceiling. This is the reason why I do what I do, is tell people you can reduce the effect of a 7.5 earthquake by doing some simple stuff. Because when things collapse, like you see on the screen there, which reminds me, when the earthquake hit, the 7.5, I was in my room. I didn't see my companion. He was like in the kitchen, and it was 10 minutes before we came around and go, holy moly, what was that? You know, I'm a gringo from the States. I've never been into a major earthquake. Chile is, they always have major earthquakes. You know, I think they hold the record for a 9-point-something earthquake. They're always having it. So consequently, the building methods they do, their bricks are about that thick, like that. That's how they build their homes. And it is able to sustain these big earthquakes. But those buildings that are built like any other building, well, guess what? They collapse. And we saw a lot of that. And here in Salt Lake County, there's been a lot of retrofitting, if you will, on building structures, schools, government buildings, you know, maybe Smiths, I don't know, that they try to retrofit and prepare for the big one. But you know what? Even the engineers, there is no guarantee. They think it will survive a 7.0 earthquake. They think it will survive a 7.0 earthquake. What happens when a 7.4 hits? So let me ask you this. What is the difference between a 7.0 and a 7.4 earthquake as far as the amount of energy? The magnitude scale, the Richter scale, is based on a logarithmic scale, okay? And you know what a logarithmic scale is, right? It's kind of safe towards the bottom, but then once it starts getting 5, 6, the energy level goes straight up. And so there's a huge amount of energy. There's more energy that is being produced from a 7.0 to a 7.2 than there is from a 6.5 to a 7.2. Okay, I mean, there's just incredible amount of energy that is there. And so the engineers, no one's going to guarantee that the buildings that they're retrofitting will survive the earthquake. And this is one thing about Mother Nature. You know, first of all, there's two things you need to understand. One, Mother Nature always wins. Okay, the house is stacked against us. Okay, Mother Nature always wins. And it's interesting because you can have a neighborhood and your house can be completely demolished, okay? But the house next to you says, why didn't the earthquake hit you? You know, it's weird stuff. Same thing with, I've been through an F5 tornado. Do you know what an F5 tornado is like? Okay, it's also a game changer. I've been through hurricanes. I've been through, I already said tornadoes, and the earthquakes, you know. Moral of that story is wherever I live, I would follow me. Okay. So anyway, after the earthquake, you have the complete building collapse. Here's going to be a big issue within Salt Lake County. We're going to have, and we're going to see severe road damage. Okay. This is, if you think for a moment that you'll be able to get on your bicycle and go maybe even across the street or to Smith's or wherever your nearest grocery shopping is after the big one, the roads will be unrecognizable. What do they usually lay in the roads? Where's all the water and sewage infrastructure at? Okay, there's a lot of empty space, crawl spaces, manholes, that kind of stuff. All that stuff is in the roads, not in your backyard, but in the roads. That's one of the reasons why the roads collapse, you know, because once the land starts moving every which way, you know, gravity takes over. Then you have overpass failures. I've heard a number of reports from emergency management, not only in Salt Lake County, but Utah County, that they are very, very concerned with the overpasses. Some of them, the newer ones, probably they'll be okay. But again, who knows if they'll survive a 7.5, you know? Bridges, you know, thankfully we don't have too many bridges going across the Great Salt Lake or Utah Lake, but those are also prone to have issues. And here's the scary part. The homes that collapse. What type of home does that look like? Doesn't that look real familiar to homes on the avenues? I lived in a home like that for years, and these are brick homes. They're, you know, that's part of the 70 to 100% probability of the major collapse of these structures. And if the earthquake doesn't get you, the landslide might. This is one thing that also happens in a major earthquake. It has a way of finding the sediment layer where it just shakes it, and the whole land, you get these landslides, okay? And so your home may not have been hurt with the earthquake, but you got 300 billion tons of earth coming towards you. I'm sorry, Mother Nature wins. So that's going to be an issue. Whole neighborhoods are going to look like what you see here in this picture. This is what I saw after the 7.5 and the 7.4 earthquake down in Chile. This is what it looked like. Okay. I don't know about you, but that's kind of serious. And here's the problem. here's the real problem. When's the government going to come and help us, right? You will not see the government. As a matter of fact, can you call 911 for help? Well, you know, 911 operations will cease to work. In other words, we will be on our own for at least days and more than likely for weeks. Okay, so however you are all prepared in your own home and neighborhood will determine how you survive this, okay? And what I'm not saying, I'm not trying, it kind of sounds like I'm preaching doom and gloom, but what I'm not saying is that everybody is going to die, okay? That's not going to happen. There's going to be a lot of areas where it'll survive just fine. The more you can prepare yourself, you know, spend $10 to secure this. How many people have large mirrors over their fireplace or some large mirror hanging on their wall? Guess what happens if that is not, and I'm going to say permanently attached to the studs behind the wall, that 300-pound mirror can end across the room, okay? When a large-scale earthquake like that happens, you'll be amazed at how things are flying. And if the mirror doesn't hit you during the earthquake, after it shatters, oh, and by the way, it's like 2 in the morning, the earthquake happens, you don't have your slippers on, you have bare feet, you're walking across, and now your feet are getting all torn up with the broken glass on the carpet. It's these simple things that can be prevented now if we just put a little bit of effort into it. So what do we do? I hate listening to people who spell doom and gloom and then run away. You know, I don't like that. If I'm going to tell you what a problem is, well, let's discuss a solution. And it turns out there is a solution. But you know what? We could do what most people will do. What will most people do? Well, a long time ago, I heard a saying that the Murray Amateur Radio Club has heard me say this before, I'm sure. And it goes something like this. When in trouble, and in doubt, run in circles, scream and shout. That is what most people will do. Why is that? Because they don't know what to do. They are not prepared. They thought that it wouldn't happen to them. And lo and behold, 2 in the morning and it's blizzarding outside, the 7.5 earthquake hits. Okay? So my question to you is, will you? And you can answer that question by asking yourself this simple question. Knowing how bad it's going to be, how can I then be part of the solution? And so maybe the next question is, well, what's the solution? That's what we're here to talk about. May I suggest that we start by learning, and I'm going to start focusing to the ham radio world, okay? We start by learning about what is going, what the real problem is. And let me first of all, I need to change this. Okay, very good. So we need to start learning about what we're going to do, and that will be what the solution, the start of the solution will be. We need to learn all we can about the problem. So you're here listening to some guy who went through a couple of large earthquakes, and hopefully you take something out of that. And then in the ham radio arena, we're going to talk about the loss of communications, which is the problem that we're going to have. When the grid down event happens, no more comms, no more phones. So what do we do? So we, as ham radio operators, can provide that. So let's learn, let's start preparing. We know what the problem is. We've learned about the problem and how to solve it. We now need to, let's see, I'm trying to get my cursor. Okay. Okay, so we know what the problem is. We've learned about the problem, and we're learning how to solve it. Now we need to prepare. What is that I need to do? Well, do I have the things that will enable me to do what I need to do, whatever that is? We're going to talk about that. What is missing? What don't I have? And how can I get the things that are missing? Now that I have what I need to do I know how to use what I have? So that's where training, and what goes hand in hand with training? Practicing. I now know how to use what I have. Now I need to practice until it becomes muscle memory. But are you done? After the practicing comes refining. Can I improve of what I have? Can I improve my preps, my training, my practicing, myself, my equipment? And after you do that, are you done? No. It's a continual cycle. We want to continue learning, preparing, training, practicing, and refining. Let me ask you this. What is a great way to practice to become an efficient net control operator? I'm going to open it up for discussion. What do you think you can do to practice becoming an efficient net control operator?
Practice like you outside events.
Oh, did I pay you?
Yes.
Yes? Ragnar, we got to talk. The answer was no.
Oh, no.
No. Okay, thank you. That is one of the best ways of practicing your craft, is going on public service events. And I like to do public service events because you never know what's going to happen. With a weekly net that we have, we kind of know what's going to happen. Everybody checks in. We may listen to the ARRL newscast. We may do this, that, and the other thing. It's the same thing every time. But when you go out on a public service event, guess what? Anything could happen. And everything does happen. Mike, how many times you've been on a public service event that something happened that you didn't experience or that you didn't expect.
Well, I remember one really big one was the days of 47 parade, and I was on the corner where the parade goes down to KSL, and all of a sudden people over on the side start screaming, and I saw smoke. We thought I saw smoke. Put their hand on the microphone, and I'm investigating. Now, it wasn't smoke. The apartment put the sprinklers on. But boy, I tell you what, for a moment my heart was racing. So I was just ready to call.
So those on Zoom, Mike said that he was on working the Days of 47 parade, where the turn from like what North Temple to Second West East.
Yeah, I can't remember what the
Yeah. North of where KSL was broadcasting. Yeah. Oh, okay, great. So the street heading down the hill towards KSL, and he saw what he thought was smoke, and people were screaming, and then after a second or two he noticed that it was the sprinklers that went on. So the people were screaming because they're getting wet, right? A much better result. I'd much rather be wet than having a fire there, right? So the point is that was not planned, and he was on his radio, and we're able to. I can tell you story after story of things that happen on Utah SAG that is really, really. You didn't realize it was going to happen. You have stories to tell. Anybody who works Utah SAG has story to tell. But that is how we learn, we prepare, we train, we practice, and refine, okay? And when we refine, we realize, you know what, that didn't work too well. I'm going to bring this thing to help me out, and you keep doing that, and then you become very, very proficient. Let me suggest that a way to start preparing is with a club SOP. What? A club what? What? I thought you were going to talk about earthquakes. So let's first of all talk about what a standard operating procedure is. Every employer has one, or they should. A standard operating procedure document is a set of step-by-step instructions compiled by the employer to help workers, the employees, carry out routine or emergency operations. The goal of an SOP is to achieve efficiency, quality output, and uniformity of performance while reducing miscommunication and failure to comply with regulatory requirements. Okay, so how does that fit into the ham radio world? Well, let me suggest that creating a standard operating guideline document is what we're going to use for the ham radio club like yours. So why do I call it a guideline instead of procedure? A guideline is a document that is a living document. Things change as you learn, as you train, as you prepare, as you refine, you find things that work out better. And so you change the document to reflect that. That is what that is for. So the standard operating guideline for used in a club is to identify the purpose or mission of the ham radio club, including any limitations, identify specific learning goals and training requirements, describes various relationships the club enters into, whether that's church, civic, municipal, whatever, county, establishes the code of conduct for each club member. Well, I've been to a lot of events where I can tell that the person did not read the code of conduct in their SOG. When we are out on a public event, guess what? We're representing the ham radio world, right? And so we need to act like that. The SOG also describes all deployment or readiness levels, and what I'm going to talk for the rest of the time lists in detail the procedures when the worst happens. And this is where the rubber meets the road. okay, when the worst happens, what is it that I do? Well, it took us just a little over a half hour to get to the meat and the potatoes. So immediately after the grid down event, the first thing you do is to secure yourself and your family and those dwelling in your home. That's kind of obvious, isn't it? If you or any member of the family requires medical attention, you might try 911. Maybe it didn't take the system down, We don't know where the bad parts of the earthquake is going to hit, okay? It could be in Murray, it could be in downtown Salt Lake, it could be in both places and everywhere in between. We do not know. Since most forms of communication will probably be down, we must not rely on this method alone. And I can't tell you how many people that I talk to say, oh yeah, I'm just going to call 911. Okay, have fun with that. You might have to put your own medical training to use in order to stop the bleed or perform CPR or other first aid. So for this reason, it is imperative that you take measures now to learn basic first aid, including stop the bleed and CPR. One of the best ways of doing that is participating in CERT programs and other training organizations that train for medical emergencies. And what other things do you do within the CERT? You learn how to search and rescue, you learn how to search a building, you learn how to be safe, you learn what's the most important rule for CERT?
Protect yourself.
Protect yourself. Do not become a victim. Okay? There's nothing worse than having a person who thinks they're going to save the world go in because they hear someone screaming, the house is listing like this, and they go in and the house collapses. Now we have two victims. Okay? And as difficult as it will feel like, it takes a certain amount of dedication to, yes, you're going to hear the screaming, but let's see if we can get some other people that do this for a living to help them out, okay? Don't become a victim yourself. So after each slide, I'm going to have kind of like the highlights. So that's what that is. Secure yourself and family, verify dwelling habitability, learn first aid, in particular stop the bleed and CPR. How many people have taken stop the bleed courses? And how long ago was that? A while. Okay, so participate in CERT training on as many occasions as possible. Don't be that guy that says, you know what, I took a great CERT class in 1985. Yeah, I am prepared. I'm certified. Yes, I are. Well, what happens after every event, after every emergency? We learn things. We learn things that worked. We learn things that didn't work. The plans within the CERT organization constantly change. So I try to do a CERT thing at least once a year, okay? And somewhere in the valley, they have that.
Dan.
So after you secured yourself and your family, this is good, immediately turn off the water valve coming into your home. What? Why? We're talking a 7.5 earthquake now.
You can't count anymore on the purity of the water.
Exactly. You want to keep the safe water inside your home and prevent it from being siphoned out of your home. What happens to the water lines in the middle of the street? They are broken up and gravity takes over. And so if your home is conducive to having the water pulled out because of where you live, you've just lost precious gallons of a commodity that will be worth more than gold when nobody has water, okay? Also, you want to keep bad water from coming in. So if you're downstream of everybody, you want to keep that bad water because now the pipes are broken, it's contaminated with, guess what else that they run in the middle of the street? Sewer, okay? There is no protection between the sewer and the potable water lines, okay? So you want to keep the bad water from entering your home. You want to then turn off the gas only if you smell gas, okay? Or if the authorities tell you. That's one thing we learned. It used to be turn off the gas. But then we found out, actually, that's not a good idea, because once we try to turn things up, we had all kinds of problems. So here's the deal. Know where the water entrance is and where the gas shutoff valve is. Verify now that you can turn off these services. Ask yourself, is my water shutoff corroded? When's the last time you went and inspected your main water valve coming into your house? If it's the type where you have to turn, 20 turns to shut it off, I would get that replaced with a quarter turn ball valve, okay? Yes?
In the same city, it's like every 2 years they go through and check the gas meter off the gas company. And mine was just replaced this last summer.
Okay, great. Not all the cities are like that. So when's the last time you checked your water valve? So make sure that you shut the water off. That should be one of the first things you do, okay? Do that before you turn your ham radio on, okay? Because you'll need that water. Turn the gas valve off only if you smell gas or told to turn the gas off. Then the next thing you do is you place the FEMA Wellbeing Identification poster on your front window or door. How many people have heard of that? Okay, there's a few of us. From FEMA, each family should have in their emergency kits 4 pieces of contact paper in 4 different colors. The family should place in a window or door the color of paper that represents the family's condition. Green is everything is okay, or you have small injuries that you can walk. You're a walking wounded type of thing. Yes, sir.
The comment from Zoom, when we talked about 911 may not be working.
Yeah.
Text messages may still work.
Text messages may still work.
Charlotte County dispatch is set up to receive text messages from 911.
Correct. So most definitely text messages might work. My point is, do not rely on that. Okay? Don't let that be your I'm okay because I can text. Okay? Because it may not work. Okay? Okay, so yellow is help needed but not urgent. Red is I need help like yesterday. Okay? We have a China hutch that somebody didn't spend $5 to attach to their rafters. It is now on top of Billy Joe, and mom cannot get that. Okay, what do? Well, you slap that red poster up there. Why do we have those anyway? What's the whole idea? Any ideas? What?
Help take care of the neighborhood.
Why? I mean, who's going to look at those posters?
So someone walking down the street can see.
Or your neighbor.
Okay, your neighbor, organizations like CERT.
They don't have to ask you, they don't have to talk to you to know what a general idea of what's going on.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, many neighborhoods already have a system in place where one of these FEMA Wellbeing Identification poster packets were delivered to every household, every apartment in our state. Okay, and member, non-member, we don't care. If you're a community member, you get one of these packets, right? And then we tell them this thing here, because we have these zone captains or neighborhood block captains that will have a zone assessment form, and they'll be going around and they're going to be looking at the homes and the condition of the homes. And if everybody gets involved in doing that, we'll be able to get the right help to the right homes in the least amount of time. Okay, and what does that equate to? Less suffering, less death. Okay, that's the whole idea. So the green paper should not be accompanied by any other color. The red and yellow should only be accompanied by black if required. Black is if there's a fatality in the home. And here's the thing that we always see, and this happens with mass casualty events, like buses that have crashed on the interstate, and there's 25 people in the bus. A lot of times, first responders, and they know to look for this, they'll go in there, and I speak from experience because I used to be an EMT. I worked rescue squad. I've seen this. Okay, so we arrive at an accident. You have people that are slumped over that seem like they've already expired, and all you got to do is just move their head so that their airway opens up, and then they go. That's all it took. If they went from a black to a green, okay, maybe they had a broken leg, whatever. And so we need to know what the black homes are too, because we have people that we want trained medical professionals to go in and evaluate them and just verify that really they're black. Okay. Oh, and here's the problem. Again, I'm going to pick on little Billy Joe. Okay. Little Billy Joe, he broke his pinky. Okay. To Billy Joe, the little 4-year-old, that's a red, right? To mommy, that could be a red because Billy Joe is screaming. And, he's looking at his hand and his finger is pointing ways that he shouldn't see, okay? To mommy, that could be a red. But what is it really? Green, because they can walk to somebody else. Yellow is if somebody needs to be coming inside the home, okay? If little Billy has legs and they can walk to the area designated to get help and stuff, to where medical attention is, that's where they're going. So she places a green and they go, okay? The hard part is trying to convince little Billy's mom that it's not a red, okay? And we're going to see this in real life. We're going to see reds that should be yellows or greens, okay? Walking wounded is a green, okay? So if you even broke your arm, I'm not saying that you're okay. There's no medical issues. I'm saying that you can go somewhere else for help, okay? If you have to stay put, then put a yellow there. Consider people who have not heeded the advice and warning of people who know better. Those people who are now trapped under the China hutch, or their house is shifted so they can't even get up from the basement. Okay, that happens a lot. That's not a help ASAP. As long as you're talking to them, it's a yellow. Okay, so this is something that needs to be trained. Okay, and if your habitat is heavily damaged, then what do? You take your family and your available supplies, hopefully everybody has a 96-hour kit, to the staging area, whatever that is. Every neighborhood is going to be different. Then you place a X, should be taped or marked clearly on the front door. Do not put any numbers or anything else there. That is reserved for the search and rescue teams to go in and verify, okay? All you're doing is you're putting an X, and that's telling them nobody's there, so they're going to go to a red house or red and black house first before they check an empty house, okay? Again, it's doing the most amount of good for the most amount of people in the shortest amount of time without getting yourself hurt, okay? So you place a FEMA-colored signage on the front door or window. You place an X if you have to vacate your home. And many of us will have to vacate our home. So if you and your household are relatively uninjured, then you as a ham radio operator who has decided that you want it to be part of the big picture and be part of the solution, you will find your radio in tune to your radio's main repeater, your club's main repeater frequency, and make a general announcement indicating that you're listening for and checking to see if the repeater is in working order. Guess what happens to repeaters during a 7.5 earthquake?
Yeah.
A lot of them will be off the air, okay? If you receive a tail squelch from the repeater, then stand by for others to join. If no squelch tail is heard, you can pretty much assume that you're not going to be able to use that repeater. Then what do? Well, okay, find your radio, tune to the main club frequency, identify if the repeater is working. If the primary club repeater is down, then go to your secondary frequency, whatever that is. That might be a simplex frequency or another repeater if you own one of those. Make calls on the repeater every 15 minutes on the 0, 15, 30, and 45. If everybody knows that, you're going to be able to save your battery, quite a bit by only transmitting at certain times of the day. How many people are familiar with the Wilderness Protocol? It's similar to that. You only listen and transmit certain times, okay? Once several members of the club are on frequency, you start a net and gather names. Do not wait for anyone to start the net. You start it yourself, okay? So what do we need to do? We need to change to this working frequency, make calls every 15 minutes, and start the net once others are on frequency. How many people are going to assume that the net control operator who does it every week is going to be able to run the net? See, here's the big issue. Some of these people who are pushing this and are training and all this type of stuff, well, you know what? They could be in St. George when this happens. And they won't even get into the Salt Lake Valley for weeks. Okay? I guarantee you. You know how long it took trucks to come in after a 7.5 earthquake? Fortunately, where I was at, they lived through a lot of them and they already knew what to do. And the first thing they did was to clear the streets out. And they tried to make best with living conditions, but they needed to get the streets cleared off. And back, especially in the area where I was at, there wasn't a huge infrastructure. I lived in homes with dirt floors type of thing, right? So there wasn't a huge sewer system underground. The sewer system was the gutter on the side, by the sidewalk. Things you see when you're not in the stage, right? Okay, so all of your club's radios should then contain the same load or configuration, which contains a set of frequencies and repeaters that have been identified as those that will be used. And it's, of course, suggested, I'm going to put on my Salt Lake County ARES AEC hat, to use the existing ARES standard load, as this is the standard load that all the clubs in the county are using. And why is that important? If all the repeaters are down, all we'll have is simplex frequencies. All of the simplex frequencies have already been assigned to each municipality, okay? So we do that so that we are not stepping on somebody else, okay? Using the standard load, you only need to identify the channels that will be used. And it's a lot easier when there's a lot of QRM out there to use channel numbers to QSY. I'm going to QSY to channel 78, okay? If everybody has the same load, that becomes very easy, okay? And here's an example of the Salt Lake County ARES standard load. The first 40 channels are for user-defined frequencies. These are frequencies that you can divide between the club and personal. You can change that any way you want. If you want 30 channels for the club and only 5 channels for the personal, do whatever you want to do, okay? This is how we had it set up. But starting with channels 41, you do not touch, okay? Because 41 through 128, every city is assigned these frequencies, and it's important that we keep them, keep everybody from stepping on each other. So, moral of the story is all club radios should contain the standard load. If you are serving an agency. Then what do? Well, you proceed to follow that agency's protocol. It might be that you need to travel to a predetermined location. You might not be able to. Just because you have something set up with the agency, they're assuming that your streets are habitable. You know, you can traverse on them. What happens if the streets are completely messed up? So depending on the level of destruction will determine if you're able to do that, okay? So can you contact the agency first? That's something that you need to work out with the agency. Can you verify if it's even possible to travel to the site, okay? And I know in the Salt Lake City area, anybody that's living on the benches, it's going to be a different world post-earthquake, okay? You then need to identify what to bring with you, and I need to hurry up here. So follow agency's protocol, determine if you need to travel to a predetermined site, and what is it that you need to bring with you. So let's identify quickly what we need to bring with us. Well, there are 5 things that I know that are absolutely critical: shelter, water and food, and sanitation. Those are the concerns that you need to worry about. For shelter, you know, your shelter starts with what you're wearing, okay? Do you have the appropriate clothing for the weather outside? And that weather might change, okay? Is it in the summertime? Is it in the wintertime? Is it snowing? Is it raining? There's nothing worse than hiking in a downpour, right? Trying to carry radio equipment, okay? So is shelter provided? Will you be operating outside? You may have to operate outside in the parking lot, okay? Are you protected from the weather? Do you need to bring a tent? Then the next thing is water and food. Do you have water stores? How much water you're bringing with you? Do you think that the water fountain is going to be working at your agency's EOC? No. Do you have water filters? That may be the only way for you to get safe water, is by sucking through a straw, okay? Do you need, what kind of food will you be bringing? Do you need heat for your food? Do you have something to start a fire? And probably the most important thing, at least for me, is what are the sanitation needs at the agency's location? Guess what? Their toilets will not work, okay? So, do you need to bring any additional items? I guarantee you, on any outing that I've ever been on, I have at least 2 rolls of TP that nobody knows about, okay? There's nothing worse than needing to go to the bathroom and going in there and seeing these cardboard tubes, you know? So don't do it, okay? Can you keep your area clean? That is just as important. Sanitation is critical. So, something else you need to bring with you: a healthy you. This is, you know, one of the most overlooked aspect of post-grid event that I've ever seen. They think that what you have is going to save you. No, it's what you think, it's what you are, it's how healthy you are. So you need to ask yourself, are you healthy today? What will it take to become healthy? Am I overweight? What will it take for me to become less overweight? Okay. Do I eat right? Should I start eating right today? What medications are you on now? If I eat right, will those medication requirements go away? How are you going to keep yourself healthy after a grid down event if you cannot keep yourself healthy now? That's the question that you need to ask yourself. I am overweight. I admit it. I am also on a carnivore diet. And I have, last year in January, I weighed 300 pounds. Right before Christmas, and I stopped the carnivore diet, I was down to 260. Okay, my goal weight is 235, and so after Christmas, I'm now back on the diet. I know that I need to be healthy myself, okay? That's not very fun to do, by the way, but is important, and it will determine your quality of life after the big event. Keeping yourself free from illness, from injury, from dehydration, keeping yourself free from fatigue, keeping yourself supplied with the personal needs that you need, and that includes meds, vision, any medical issues, whatever. It is critical that we think about that. After all, here's the fundamental truth to life. You are responsible for your own safety, well-being, and comfort. Okay? Now, as a matter of fact, how many people have heard of Jim Phillips? Okay, Jim Phillips is a preparedness nut. He passed away about a month ago. It was horrible. But he has all of his life taught provident living. That's a PC way of saying survival skills. Okay, and he has this law of the parachute, and I think it's worth repeating. What is the law of the parachute? Imagine yourself in an airplane and you need to jump out of the airplane. Okay, I don't know why you would want to do that, but apparently people do. Okay, so here's some questions you need to ask yourself. First of all, do I have a parachute? Okay. Second, did I put the parachute on? Third, do I know how to use the parachute? 4, as I jump out, did I actually deploy the parachute? And 5, is the parachute of life-saving quality? If you say no to any one of those items, guess what? You are a statistic. Okay? So there's the law of the parachute. I absolutely love that idea. So why is that important? Well, turns out gravity has no responsibility. Okay? When you jump out of an airplane, guess what? Gravity does not care that you have a parachute on or off. It makes no difference to gravity. Okay? He has no, or is it she? Has no responsibility for your safety and well-being. The same thing holds true after a 7.5 earthquake. The earthquake, the grid down event, has no responsibility for your comfort, for your safety, for your well-being. You are responsible for that, okay? And there's no rule that says that you cannot be comfortable, or at least more comfortable, and you can become comfortable if you prepare now, okay? So, we are on the last couple slides. Let's talk about the summary. Things to do and learn now before the event. First aid, CPR, stop the bleed, regular CERT courses, continual regular CERT courses, identify water and gas shutoff valves, verify that the water shutoff is not corroded. Change it, replace it if you need to, radio configuration and readiness level. Net control operations, which all has to do with having your club SOG written out. The standard load in your radio, determine your club's repeater, secondary and primary. Learn agency protocols. Keep a readiness bag with clothes, water purification supplies, sanitation supplies, food, comfort items, medical supplies in your bag now. How many people have a 96-hour kit that you can take with you as you're fleeing your house? Fantastic. I love it. If you did not raise your hand, consider it. Most importantly, keep yourself healthy and fit, and do what it takes for that to happen. Post-event activities, secure yourself and your family. Apply first aid if necessary, or stop the bleed. Turn off your water supply. That has to happen right away. Turn off gas supply if needed. Place FEMA condition posters on your window or door. Find your radio. Make sure it's in working order, right? Call out the repeater every 15 minutes. Start a net. Contact agency to determine travel requirements, and bring shelter, water, food, sanitation supplies, including radio and means of keeping you on the air. So it's a lot more than just your radio. You may not be able to plug in your power supply there at the agency, okay? They may have a generator, but how much diesel do they have for that, right? At some point, it's going to go bye-bye. Also consider other radio infrastructure like antenna, mast, cables, that kind of stuff. So there's lots to do. So we talked a lot about severe earthquakes, your club SOG, your personal preparedness, agency protocols. My question to you is, do you have any questions for me? While you're thinking of questions, there's the QR code. You can go ahead and scan and download this. Also, know that you can email me at any time, n7xdl.dan@gmail.com, and for a small $30 a month fee, I'll be happy to, no. Wrong presentation. I would be absolutely honored to answer any questions you have offline. Yes, sir.
You said the benches are going to be a different world. Could you elaborate what you mean by that?
In the Salt Lake City area, because that's the data that I have most current, there's a 70 to 100% probability that those homes will be destroyed or collapsing or very dangerous. Okay, there's already they're saying about like 2,600 to 4,000 deaths right after the main event. Okay, and that's not including the things that happen after the earthquake. So it's along the benches where the old homes are, where the old structures are. That is the thing that is a killer. You have stick frame homes, you have brick veneer homes. Guess what? They pop off the home as quick as you can say, "I'm radio." Yeah, there's going to be a lot of structural damage. And worse yet, the terrain is going to be really messed up, okay? Now, I can't prove it to you. We're going to have to wait for the big one. All we know is what type of homes are there now. And even those new homes that are going up that cost millions of dollars, nobody can guarantee that those homes will survive a 7.5, okay? And so it's, flip a coin. I have earthquake insurance on my home. Do you?
Yeah.
So good. If you do, that's great. Consider it. I'm sorry?
The condo association where I live demanded it.
Oh, good. Absolutely. May I suggest you go to saltlakeCountyAries.org, the website, or murrayarc.org. We have all these presentations, which you'll see this presentation there. You can download. Also, may I suggest you go to YouTube and do it. YouTube. My goodness. Wait a second. I'm missing some Diet Coke here. Yeah, YouTube. Go to YouTube and do a search. Salt Lake County Aries, just like that on the screen. And there's a lot of presentations on water purification, something you may want to take a look at. I haven't done the sanitation up yet. I don't know if we have that in the MARC. But anyway, it's worth taking a look at. Now, if you're interested here's the Urban Search and Rescue Habitat X markings. If you ever wondered what all that stuff means, I've included that in there. And again, when you download the presentation, all that stuff is on there, okay? Does anybody have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I really worry about all those large apartment buildings that are built west of the fault on the areas where it's going to have liquefaction.
Yeah.
I find that pretty terrifying.
Yep.
I'm glad I don't live in one of them, but yikes.
Yeah, it's a little scary. Next, yes, sir.
Yeah, we talked a lot about earthquakes, but I think in terms of that fire in Hawaii, something like that could happen anywhere.
You know what? That's a natural consequence of a 7.5 earthquake. You know how many fires are going to start up? You know how many water heaters are not tied properly? And they're going to topple over. that house is going to be on fire. People are going to die because of that, because they did not spend $5 to strap their water heater up. Okay. May I suggest that you start a neighborhood action group where you go and volunteer and take a look at everybody's water heater and make a list and say, hey, you need to have something, you need to have this taken care of. I go to my neighbors. There's one neighbor who, and I don't know why they do this, but there's a lot of homes apparently that have water heaters in the middle of the room. Okay, so what do you do with that? Well, I built a wall, and I had it was a swinging wall where I had pins that will break during an earthquake, but they have bolts up on top where it will swing. Okay, and the water heater is tied to that, so the water heater is not going to fall down. It cost. I had the 2x4s. I had to go spend $8 for the breakaway bolts, and that was it. It doesn't take much if we just come together and work as a team. And by the way, that is how anybody survives any disaster, is working together, being a community and putting your heads together, knowing where your resources are, knowing who can do what, and helping each other out. So, any other questions? Yes.
2 questions. You mentioned those FEMA color-coded.
Yeah.
In our search stuff, we didn't hear anything about that. Where do you get those?
Well, you can go to FEMA, but when we did this in our neighborhood, we just went down to Walmart and got those big packs of contact paper.
Oh, you made your own.
We made our own. Yeah. You're not gonna. Good luck of.
Getting FEMA to.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say though, on that note, those colors do match the triage system. So
Yes.
most people would probably get an idea of what it is if they're not familiar with it. They may have a little bit of confusion.
And that's actually not a bad idea, using. I know a lot of organizations, they'll have these big plastic sheets, and I'm talking about 20 feet by 20 feet of red, yellow, and green. I don't know if I've ever seen green. I know red and yellow are there. And you can take that, cut them up. You know how many small squares you can do to put on your window? Sabra,
Yes.
question.
I was wondering, in apartment buildings, individual tenants will not have control over the water valve. You might say that the apartment building should have a plan of someone who's going to be there at all times, whose responsibility it will be to turn it off. But these places are managed by huge corporations who don't care, so they're not going to do that. So what do you do then?
Well, okay, so you go to the property manager, the apartment manager, and tell them first of all, ask them if they know where the main water shutoff is, okay? And that's critical, especially for the people who live on the top floor, okay? Ask them where the water shutoff is, and if they do not know where it is, then ask to see the property management company who actually owns the property, okay? You start going above people's heads and let them know that you need to know where that is, and there's no reason why they can't take you to that location so you can see where that is and see what type of tool you need to turn it off. With apartments, it's not going to be the same 3/4 inch or 1/2 inch valve that comes into each of our homes. It's going to be a 2-inch line or something, right? And so you need to make sure that you have the ability to turn it off. There's 2 things that will spell doom. One, thinking that the government, what was the 9 words that the President Reagan used about the government? Yeah. So in other words, and I don't mean to put anybody under the table, but they're not going to save you. It's what you do that will save yourself, okay? The government is, hopefully they'll be here eventually, but for the first week or 2, guess what? We are on our own. That means the homes that are burning, they're probably going to be burnt down to the ground, okay? How are you going to prevent that fire from going to the next house. You know, these are big things that we have to worry about, especially an apartment where you have a huge congregation together. And, you know, I don't know if everybody's water heater is set correctly. You know, I think they're supposed to, but I don't know. So you need to have a plan A, and you need to assume that plan A will not work. You need to have a plan B. You need to assume that plan B is not going to work in all situations. So you need a plan C, you know. My job in what I do is to try to think of the worst case scenario. That's why I always use the 7.5 earthquake. It turns out that it could be a 7.0. One thing that we do know is it will be at least a 7.0. And another thing we know, there has not been an earthquake in the last 20,000 years that is greater than 7.5. So isn't that a relief?
Yeah.
So if it's a 7.0, it'll make the 6.7 in California laughable. Okay, so yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
Well, mine's not really a question, but getting back to the training, back in 2001, we had a tornado back here.
Yeah.
And I had a sheriff officer contact me on my ham radio and told me to report to a certain area where the tornado had actually hit. And I got there before everybody else and went and parked outside the damaged area and started walking in with my ham radio and my vest on. And it was kind of interesting because I saw a police officer trying to land the medic unit on the street. And what do I see on the street? A whole bunch of debris.
Yeah, sure.
And I sat there and told the police officer, wave them off, put it in a holding pattern. And he's going, why? I said, look at all the debris. Use your brain and start looking at all the debris here. And so then finally I sat there and found a place where they could sit it down, and we sit it down. And then after that, I had other police officers coming up to me, going like, what should I do? What should I do? And the police officers and the fire department didn't know what to do because they were lost when they arrived.
You know, let me tell you a secret, okay?
They never trained for a
Tornado.
and they didn't know how to do it.
Yep.
Was the thing. And I said to came back and told them, have you ever trained for other disasters? Treat it like that and kind of follow the same protocols.
Yep. So taking the many years of classes with Jim Phillips, he always trained for the worst scenario, okay? And his philosophy is if you train for the worst, then no matter what happens, it'll be an adventure, okay? And I really agree with that. It's good to train for the worst scenario and try to think of worse things yet, right? So here's the little tidbit that works every single time. And I see this. I carry my trauma bag in my car all the time. I will stop at accidents, and I tell you what, there isn't a cop living that is not ashamed to say, if you tell them you're a first responder and you have your trauma bag and you act like you know what you're doing, guess what? You have the scene, okay? I can't tell you how many car accidents, rollovers and stuff I've been to where I'm the first one there. The highway patrol just barely arrived. We're trying to get this lady out of the vehicle. And, you know, I'm feeling for a pulse. I thought I felt a pulse. And so I could not, she was still buckled up. It was a rollover. And I yelled out, I need a knife. And you should have seen how quickly that highway patrolman picked his knife up and gave it to me. You know, the trick is, if you're prepared, there's something about you that people look to, okay? When you go to an accident and you take a look at the situation, you not only, one of the problems with EMTs back in the day is we all had tunnel vision. We looked at, oh, that car, but you can't see this thing that's on fire that will kill you if you don't know about it. So we learn to walk. I don't care how bad the accident is. We walked to the accident. We are taking inventory up, down, side, left, behind me, everywhere, okay? And you can do this really quick. And it calms yourself down. you're able to think what you're going to do. You get to the patient or patients, you're able to take charge. You tell people, I want you. You don't have to know their name. You just point them. I need you to call 911. I need you to, get this something out of the road. I need you to this, that, and the other thing. And that's what people need. When people do not know what to do, they love taking orders, okay? And you control the chaos. That's the most important thing. Things become a lot more calm. And even though the lady was 1085 Echo, she was gone, everybody around was able to deal with it because I was given the highway patrol orders. I was given this, that, and the other thing. This is what I need, do this, flat. And everybody was doing their thing. And it could have been a very chaotic. Remember that little saying, when in trouble, when in doubt, run in a circle, scream and shout? That's what people do when they're not prepared. Okay? So the idea is to become prepared as you can. And I know where my limitations are. Know your limitations and train and prepare and learn to overcome them. If you keep doing it, you become better and better. I've talked your guys' ears off. Thank you very much.
Still have my left.